So I want to thank everybody for being here. As you know, last night we reached a momentous breakthrough in the Middle East, something that people said was never going to be done. We ended the war in Gaza and really, on a much bigger basis, created peace. And I think it's going to be a lasting peace, hopefully an everlasting peace. Peace in the Middle East. We secured the release of all of the remaining hostages, and they should be released on Monday or Tuesday. Getting them is a complicated process. I'd rather not tell you what they have to do to get them. There are places you don't want to be, but we are getting the hostages back on Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday.
Israel and Hamas have reached a ceasefire deal. The war in Gaza is over. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump is expected to change his focus to ending the war in Ukraine. How did we get to a full ceasefire in Gaza, and could this lead to end of the war in Ukraine? Hamas leaders announced this week that a ceasefire agreement has been reached with Israel, marking what they describe an end to the Israel-Hamas war. The deal, brokered with the assistance of US President Trump and supported by a coalition of mediators, includes provisions for a hostage prisoner exchange, partial Israeli withdrawal, and expanded humanitarian access into Gaza. According to Reuters, Hamas stated that the agreement is based on a peace proposal by President Trump, with assurances from US, Turkey, and Qatar that Israel would comply with terms. Hamas political leader Khalil al-Hayya emphasized that the deal was contingent on international guarantee. The agreement reportedly outlines several critical terms. Hamas will release 48 Israeli hostages in return for the release of hundreds of Palestinian detainees. This includes an estimated 250 long-term prisoners, women and minors, and over 1,700 Palestinians arrested during the ongoing war, as reported by Reuters. While not a full withdrawal, Israeli forces are expected to retreat from key urban areas in Gaza. However, Israel is reportedly maintaining military control over parts of the Strip, according to Washington Post. The deal includes reopening border crossing in Egypt to facilitate the flow of humanitarian aid. Reconstruction efforts will be monitored and supported by international organizations. Also, the US administration has deployed approximately 200 US troops to Israel as a part of the civil-military coordination to help monitor and implement ceasefire. These personnel will not enter Gaza but will work in logistics, intelligence, and humanitarian support roles, according to Associated Press. This deployment falls under US Central Command operational authority and aims to ensure the smoother rollout of aid deliveries and reconstruction support. Further, Times of Israel reports that the US officials provided informal assurances to regional partners that Washington would not allow Israel to resume hostilities after the ceasefire. Commentary from Le Monde emphasized Trump's effort to position himself as a peace president and architect of the plan, which is expected to unfold in multiple phases, beginning with de-escalation followed by government's reforms and economic reconstruction. Despite cautious optimism, analysts warn that the major issues remain unresolved. These include Hamas' future military status, political governance of Gaza, and how ceasefire violations will be solved. As the Washington Post reports, several senior officials in Prime Minister Netanyahu's government expressed concerns over the scale of the prisoner release and potential limitations of future military operations. On the Palestinian side, divisions within Hamas could jeopardize implementation of this deal. As we know, in January 2025, US, Qatari, and Egyptian mediators presented a three-phase proposal that included hostage exchange, withdrawal, and political negotiations. However, talks nearly collapsed when Israel accused Hamas of reneging on terms by last minute. By March 25, ceasefire talks stagnated again despite a new US proposal to extend humanitarian pauses in exchange for incremental hostage releases. In July, US-Israel pulled their teams out of talks in Doha after labeling Hamas a proposal as unserious. In August 2025, Hamas accepted 60-day truce that would exchange 10 Israeli captives for 150 Palestinian detainees. Israel declined to formally respond. However, despite the current agreement, several unresolved issues pose significant risks. As analysts report, the agreement does not outline a mechanism of the dismantling Hamas military infrastructure, including rocket capabilities and tunnel network. It remains unclear whether Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, or a new body will govern Gaza following Israeli redeployment. With no formal arbitration or penalty process in place, breaches of ceasefire could go unchecked, as seen in past truces. Israel has retained control over key areas, with officials emphasizing the need to prevent Hamas military reconstitution. Opposition to the deal still exists within both Israeli and Palestinian constituencies. Meanwhile, in a high-stakes meeting at the White House this week, US President Donald Trump hosted Finnish President Alexander Stubb for discussions that range from Arctic cooperation to NATO preparedness and the ongoing war in Ukraine. The session marked one of Trump's most visible foreign policy engagement in recent months and offered new insight into his evolving approach to European security and the war in Ukraine. During the meeting, Trump expressed a clear stance in support of Finland's security, reaffirming that US would uphold its commitments under the NATO Charter in the event of any aggression against the alliance's northernmost members. He also publicly recognized the strengths of Finland's military and its strategic value within the alliance. The bilateral talks featured the announcement of a significant Arctic defense cooperation initiative. Under the deal, US will purchase up to 11 icebreaker vessels built with Finnish technology, a move framed by both sides as critical for Arctic navigation, climate research, and geopolitical stability. Trump emphasized that the partnership is a part of a larger strategy to safeguard peace and security in the region, although the icebreaker agreement served as the public centerpiece of the meeting. Ukraine war remained a core subject of discussions between two leaders. Following the meeting, President Stubb convened to the press that he interpreted Trump's tone as increasingly critical of Russia. Trump made separate remarks that further clarified his position on military aid in Ukraine. He said, cautious regarding the proposed transfer of Tomahawk missiles, stating that he would need a clearer understanding of how Ukraine intended to use such long-range systems. While he did not reject the idea, he emphasized the importance of ensuring any escalation was carefully managed. These recent developments reflect a broader shift in Trump's messaging on Ukraine. In earlier public appearances, particularly in September, he had expressed confidence in Ukraine's ability to reclaim its occupied territories, an apparent departure from his previously more restrained approach to Kyiv's military goals. However, even with this rhetorical shift, he has maintained a reluctance to endorse, identify, or open-ended US support, instead of advocating for a more pragmatic conditional framework for assistance. In this context, Trump used the Finland meeting to again press NATO allies on defense spending, highlighting Spain's failure to meet the alliance's 2% GDP target. He reportedly questioned Spain's contribution in the alliance and raised the possibility for consequences. The remarks stirred criticism in diplomatic circles, but were consistent with Trump's long-standing emphasis on what he views as a burden sharing within NATO. The Finland meeting also occurred amid new diplomatic efforts by Ukraine to raise Trump's international profile. According to reporting from Reuters, Ukrainian officials have been lobbying European lawmakers to support a Nobel Peace Prize nomination for Trump, presenting as a symbolic endorsement of his potential to help broker a ceasefire deal. While the initiative has not resulted in success, it underscores Kyiv's intent to keep Trump engaged in diplomatic process. The tone of the meeting and the issues addressed point recalibration in Trump's foreign policy. He has sought to reinforce his commitment to US allies while preserving flexibility in how US managed its involvement in Ukraine. For Finland, however, the reaffirmation of defense commitments was critical assurance, particularly given its relatively recent accession to NATO in 2023 and its strategic proximity to Russia. For Ukraine, Trump's comments and private discussions suggest willingness to maintain US involvement with conditions. However, his cautious approach to advanced weapons transfer and his critique of NATO internal dynamics indicates that while supportive of Ukraine's sovereignty, Trump remains focused on avoiding escalation, although no new policies announcements emerged directly from the meeting. Diplomatic observers noted a hardening of Trump's posture toward Moscow, coupled with a continued emphasis on allied responsibility and strategic restraint. That's all for today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and glory to Ukraine.